Well, since we're waiting for parts for the Touareg, we're going to get started on the Land Rover. First thing we're working on is just to see if we can diagnose the suspension real quick. Put a jack underneath the receiver just to take some weight off the springs while we troubleshoot it. But we weren't getting any response from the air system, so we checked the fuses. And sure enough, there's a 60 amp fuse for the air compressor itself, and that was blown. So we're just checking the other fuses. There's actually several. The 60 amp is the main fuse for the air compressor, but there's a couple other, I think 5 and 10 amp fuses that are related to the air compressor system. So we just went through and checked all fuses. The only one we did find shorted was burned was the air compressor one. So we're going to replace that and test out the suspension. After replacing that burnt fuse, our air suspension system started working. Currently it's in the off-road height. We are getting some errors on the suspension itself. Various codes. It'll sporadically go into extended off-road height as if it thinks it's high-centered on something, and then it'll reset itself. So just at least we know that the compressor's working and the airbags are able to lift. On our scan tool, you can see that we're getting readings from each of the 4 height sensors, even though they are all over the place, no consistent value. And we're also showing galley pressure. So the system's holding pressure. So the system is working, but we will have to troubleshoot these height sensors. The car isn't sitting level front to back or even side to side. So the next step before we do any more testing on the sensors themselves is to kind of diagnose the airbags to see if we are getting any leaks on an airbag or if maybe it's a valve body. So to test the airbags and the valve body, what we did is we put a piece of blue tape on the center of each wheel and on the fender above it with a black mark. And this is mainly just to give us a reference point, so we're measuring from the same 2 points each time. We raised the suspension up to off-road height, pulled all the fuses related to the air suspension, and then measured each one of these and recorded that measurement. What we found was the next morning, the front was completely sagging on both sides. So that leads us to believe that front air block needs to be rebuilt or checked or replaced. So that's what we're going to start with. My son couldn't wait for me to help him, so he started tearing this apart by himself while my daughter and I were working on the white Touareg. Basically dismantling the inside of the Land Rover to do a good thorough cleaning. Of course, I made sure the battery was disconnected and for at least an hour before he actually started doing anything, because this does have airbags, overhead airbags. So as you can see, it's quite disgusting. All kinds of different types of food. Pulling the interior apart is fairly easy. I really enjoy working on this Land Rover. Things all seem to come apart in a logical way. So you take these 4 bolts, take the seat loose, and then pop this cover off, and there'll be an electrical connector, and this is the same for both the front passenger and driver's seat. You got an electrical connector there. You back that screw out right there, and that'll slowly withdraw the electrical connector. You'll be able to unplug it and pull the seat out. Again, it was disgusting in here. Everything you could imagine could be spilled or left in here. Food, toys, chargers, coins. It's quite disgusting. But it's a challenge, and we like challenge. It's one of the reasons why I got such a good deal on it. That terrain select knob in the middle wouldn't even turn.
Yep. Centerpiece.
We thought it was broken. Pretty sure we were going to have to replace it. But again, my son, he's 14 years old. He just started taking it apart on his own. I'd check on him every once in a while just to make sure he wasn't doing anything unsafe, in case he had questions or anything. This was all done outside, so each night I had him put all the pieces that he took off back in the car just so they wouldn't get damaged by the weather or animals. He even took the center dash console out there. That had to be removed so we could take the center console and clean all that stuff in between. Plans to pull the whole carpet up. He's got all of it pulled up except for this front section. It comes up in 3 sections. You got the forward section, a middle section, and then the rear compartment area. But it is any little crevice you could find food and who knows what else piled up in there. I was proud of him though. He jumped right into it, took it apart. Take video of it as much as possible. You know how that goes. You get into taking things apart, and his camera doesn't have the greatest. This is what we're looking through right now. It's his camera. You can see water collected in there. That's not from us. It's been in there. This is on the passenger front seat. Looks like antifreeze coffee. Who knows what spilled there, and it's still damp. Again, this car came from California, so it's not a real dry climate, but it's also not a real wet climate. But we're pretty sure that's a mixture of coffee and looks like, based on the water moisture, the sunroof drains are leaking, which is notorious on these. They got little rubber grommets that go through the
spilled
body to the outside. They're kind of supposed to seal up, and they just rot off.
What is this?
That's actually one there, I think, part of it. We weren't sure, so we just kept it.
Alright, that rubber's falling off. I don't think it's salvageable. And we'll keep it just so in case we need to reference it. At least a spare out.
This is what it looks like now that he's cleaned it up. Basically just spent a couple hours in here wiping everything down, steam cleaning it. He's got a little handheld steamer that he uses. Just kind of worked his way around, got in between things, tried to be careful around electronics so don't damage anything. But it was quite the task. He stuck with it though, and I think it looks really good now. I mean, compared to what we saw just a little bit ago. Looks much better and smells much better.
Wait, can I write this down?
Fortunately, this is the only video that we got of us actually pressure washing. Let's do my son's camera again so you can see that it doesn't give such a clear video. I do apologize that we didn't get better video of it. These are the floor mats. So we pulled all the carpet, the 3 sections of carpet out, and the floor mats. And we use a hot water mixture with Simple Green, the purple power. We find that works really good. It doesn't leave a residue in there. We mix it with the hot water, we pour it on there, let it sit just for a few minutes. If we need to agitate it with a brush, we will. Then we pressure wash it like you see here. This is the front section of the carpet. And hopefully you can make out how nasty that water is that's coming out of it. That's all the crap that's been spilled in it. Sorry for the water spots. Can't really see. There was some staining in the carpet that we could not get out, but at least now we know it's clean. And he's already got some ideas. Maybe later on, if we find a good carpet set, he's thinking like a black carpet that they offered in the as an alternative color in the Land Rover. Now that we know how easy it is to replace. We removed the headliner. for two reasons. Number one, we wanted to clean it, and the main reason, we had to replace that damaged sunroof. So to do that, you have to have the headliner out. This is the best time because it is easier to get it out with the seats out. It's just too tight a fit. So if you get all the seats out, you can kind of drop the headliner down. It's fairly easy. Tilt it, and it slides right out. We brought the headliner inside the house so we could do some spot cleaning on it. Looking around, you can see that it does have some staining. Everything from looks like greasy fingers to food, something splattered or spilled. You do have to be careful when you're cleaning these, especially one with this many years on it. The glue will start separating from the fabric, and then you have a saggy headliner. So the goal was not to have to replace it yet. We're still looking at ideas and options. It's in fairly good shape other than the staining. No real bad sagging. I think most of it was just in a few tight little corners that you barely notice. As you can see, there's some discoloration on it. His mom is just cleaning it with a clean hand towel and some mild soap and water. And just touching it up. She's rubbing it lightly, and it's actually coming clean. Probably say 80 to 90% of the stains are going to be able to get out from doing this. But again, you have to be careful. You can actually cause more damage if you don't pay attention. If you push too hard, or you irritate that, or wet that glue backing too much.
Pretty nasty too.
So she just spent a little bit of time and carefully cleaned the whole thing, and I think it turned out real good.
Don't worry, I won't get you in there. Just your hands. You're a hand model. Alright, so what we are going to be doing is replacing the sunroof. You can see on the outside it doesn't look like there's anything wrong with it. But when we were looking at this one, doing our inspection on it before we bought it, we did notice push up on the driver's side, nothing. Push up on the passenger side. So if we open this, we can't do it right now. If we open it, there's a track on both sides. They're plastic tracks. This side is broken. So you can't just buy replacement parts to it or just a new track. You have to replace the whole sunroof assembly, including the glass. For Land Rover, for a new one, they were asking somewhere around $1,200 to $1,500. Most of your salvage shops wanted about $450 to $500. I did find one, actually only within an hour from here. It's at an 05, but found it for $150. So we already pulled the headliner down, and we did this with the seats out because you can't get the headliner out without the front seats out. It barely fits out of here to start with. So as you can see, we got it pulled down. Once we get it out, maybe be able to show you the broken track. This is what it kind of looks like. All the way back. We did find the sunroof drain, if you can see it right there. Is the little plastic part that transitions from the inside to the outside of the car is rotten on most of the corners. That one is still a piece intact, but we're going to replace it too. So we're going to replace all four corners. You usually don't see the rear ones rotten, but this one definitely is. Let's see if I can get a good picture of it. Sorry for the wind. Let's see. Looking at it like that, it looks fine, but the grommet that goes through the body is rotten completely off. It goes right through that hole right there. So we're gonna get new ones. Fortunately, it lets you buy the whole tube. So we might just end up replacing the whole tube. Still looking for those. Since we got the headliner down anyways, right? That's what it looks like. Got a couple bolts to holds in the sunroof assembly. There's a couple good videos on the headliner off. It's actually fairly easy. It's actually in the house getting cleaned right now just by hand. So here's our replacement sunroof assembly. See the sunroof drains. So we checked those, make sure they weren't damaged at all 4 corners. This comes with most of the hardware. Again, this is from a salvage yard, about an hour from where we live. That's a reflection of the interior light of my Excursion. That's it. Should be able to bolt it down. We checked to make sure the tracks weren't broken on this one. I'm not sure how that one, somebody punched the sunroof or something. Tried closing it with something in there. Who knows? They did cut the pigtail, but the nice thing is, this is just a connector. We got to undo it from there, drop it down, pull it out, and plug it into our vehicle harness. So probably have to do a calibration on it with the scan tool. That'll be good. So stay tuned. We're getting ready to replace this. Hopefully get this drains repaired and headliner back in.
Here's what it looks like with the sunroof removed. Basically a nice clean hole in your roof. It was surprisingly easy. Just remove those bolts, but I do recommend having 2 people. Here's the new one installed, or the replacement. Old but new. Went in just as easy as the old one came out. Here we are testing the drains that we did. We replaced all the drains with this clear tubing. All 4, there's 1 on each corner. 2 goes through behind the dash, or in front of the dash, I suppose, and drops out. The water ends up coming out just between the firewall and the rear of the front tire. The other 2 go back and drop down on just on the forward part of the rear tires. You can see it's clear tubing, fits really tight on there. That was probably the hardest part. Then we just followed the old route, fed it down, and instead of using the factory grommets, I found some rubber grommets that protects the tubing from the body, but allows the tubing to go all the way through. So that's it. We got all the new replacement sunroof in, all 4 drains replaced, and now we're going to water test it. Basically, I had my kids out there watching. Nice thing about the clear tubing, you could see the water draining down, and then you just had to look for the outside of the car. Behind both front tires, like you can see here, the water will be draining. I just had a hose up there running over the sunroof. The rear drains will drain just forward of the rear tires on both sides. And that's it. Sunroof in. I want to thank all military members, veterans, and their family members for keeping this great land safe. Also want to thank all our police officers and their families for keeping us safe as well. Thank you, and be safe out there.